you're listening to this story tonight, perhaps you're already lying in bed, your body heavy against the mattress, your eyes slowly closing, and you're looking for something soft, steady and soothing to carry you into rest. This is not just a football story. It is a bedtime journey, a tale meant to ease your thoughts and calm your breathing. Tonight, we drift into the life of Jack Grealish, a boy who grew up in Birmingham, a boy with dreams as wild and big as the football stadiums he would one day conquer. As you listen, let the words wash over you gently, like a lullaby for your mind, and if you fall asleep before the end, that is exactly the point. Because this is not only about football, it is about peace, about rhythm, about letting go. Jack Peter Grealish was born on September 10, 1995, in Solihull, a suburban town just outside Birmingham, in the heart of England. His family was close-knit, Irish on his father's side, proud and grounded. The Grealish household was filled with noise, with laughter, with the chaos of children running about. But at the center of it all was Jack, a boy with wide eyes, restless energy, and a football never far from his feet. From his earliest years, people noticed that Jack had something unusual. He wasn't particularly big, he wasn't the strongest, but he had a way with the ball that seemed almost magical. When other children kicked wildly, Jack caressed the ball, rolled it under his boots, shielded it with his small frame, already showing glimpses of the player he would become. Life in Solihull was ordinary, but in the ordinary is often where dreams begin. Jack's family supported Aston Villa, the proud club of Birmingham. Villa Park was not far away, and the chants of claret and blue often echoed through the city. For young Jack, Villa was not just a team, it was a world of heroes, a stage of dreams. His parents, Kevin and Karen, encouraged his passion, letting him play outside for hours. Neighbors would remember seeing the boy dribbling endlessly, pretending the driveway was a grand stadium, imagining crowds cheering his every touch. Jack was also deeply connected to his Irish roots. Through his grandparents, he grew up with stories of Ireland, with traditions that gave him both pride and identity. Later in life, he would even represent Ireland at youth levels before fully committing to England. But as a child, those Irish ties gave him a sense of belonging that stretched beyond Birmingham. School for Jack was, like for many football-obsessed children, secondary to the game. Teachers noticed he often drifted in thought, daydreaming about matches, itching to get back outside. Yet they also saw his charm. Jack had an easy smile, a mischievous glint in his eyes, and a way of making friends quickly. But his true confidence was always with the ball. By the time he was 6, Aston Villa scouts had already spotted him. Imagine that. A little boy, barely taller than the ball itself, wearing oversized kit, stepping into the youth academy of the club he loved. For Jack, it was like stepping into a dream. At Villa's academy, coaches immediately noticed his extraordinary close control. He wasn't fast, he wasn't powerful, but he could dribble in tight spaces better than anyone. He had balance, creativity, and above all, bravery. He wasn't afraid to take on players, to try tricks, to express himself. But even as a child, Jack faced challenges. He was small, sometimes fragile compared to others, and there were doubts about whether he could survive in the physical world of English football. But Jack had something no training manual could teach: resilience. He kept going, kept dribbling, kept creating. At home, his family's support was unwavering. Jack grew up surrounded by love, but also by tragedy. When he was very young, he lost his younger brother, Keelan, who died as a baby. It was a heartbreak that shaped the family deeply. Though Jack was too little to fully understand at the time, the memory of his brother stayed with him throughout his life. Later, he would dedicate moments of his career to Keelan, carrying him in his heart onto the pitch. That early experience gave Jack both sensitivity and strength, a reminder that life is precious, that every opportunity must be cherished. As Jack grew older, his style of play only became more unique. Coaches often laughed, saying he dribbled like he was glued to the ball. He wore his socks rolled down, barely covering his shin pads, a look that would become his trademark. Some thought it was careless, others thought it was rebellious, but for Jack, it was simply how he felt comfortable. He moved freely, he played freely, and even as a boy, he stood out from everyone else. There were times when he struggled academically, times when focus was difficult. But football gave him discipline. Training sessions at Aston Villa taught him structure, teamwork, and responsibility. He began to understand that talent was not enough, that he would need to work hard, to sacrifice, to dedicate himself. And Jack did. Though he loved fun, though he loved laughter and the lighter sides of life, when it came to football, he was serious. By his teenage years, Jack was already seen as one of Villa's brightest prospects. He rose through the academy ranks, playing against boys older and stronger, yet never looking out of place. His dribbling mesmerized opponents. His confidence inspired teammates. Fans who followed youth matches began to whisper about him. "There's this kid," they said, "who looks like he could be something special." Jack's family often traveled with him, cheering him on at games. His bond with them was unshakable. He wasn't alone in his journey. He had a team behind the scenes, pushing him, believing in him. And in Jack's eyes, he wasn't just playing for himself. He was playing for them, for his family, for his community, and in memory of Keelan. One of the pivotal experiences of his early career was his involvement with the Republic of Ireland youth teams. Because of his heritage, Jack was eligible, and he proudly wore the green shirt at underage levels. For Jack, representing Ireland was a way of honoring his roots, his grandparents, his family's history. And yet, deep down, he knew that one day he might face the difficult choice between Ireland and England. That choice would come later. For now, as a teenager, it was all about joy, about experiencing the thrill of international football, about learning what it meant to represent a country. Still, the most important stage was always Aston Villa. Villa Park was sacred ground, the stadium where Jack dreamed of walking out in front of tens of thousands. Every training session, every youth match, every moment with the club was a step toward that dream. He idolized Villa legends, studied their games, imagined himself following in their footsteps. At times, doubts crept in. Injuries, criticisms, the harshness of youth football. They all tested Jack, but he had an unshakable self-belief, a certainty that he was destined for something bigger. He would often say to himself quietly that one day he would lead Villa onto the pitch. That dream, which seemed almost too bold for a boy of Solihull, became the fire that guided him. By the time he was 15 and 16, his reputation was spreading further. National newspapers mentioned him as a rising star. Scouts from other clubs watched him closely. But Jack's heart was loyal. He didn't want Arsenal or Chelsea or Manchester United. He wanted Villa. That loyalty would become one of his defining traits. Picture him. Then, a teenager with messy hair, socks down to his ankles, dazzling opponents with twists and turns. Picture the quiet evenings when he returned home. Exhausted from training, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, dreaming of Villa Park. These were the years when Jack's future was still unwritten, but the path was becoming clearer. And as you lie here now, drifting, imagine those nights in Birmingham, when a young boy chased a ball under the streetlights, when he believed that somehow, someday, he would rise from the academy pitches to the grand stage. That belief, steady and unshakable, carried him forward. The early life of Jack Grealish was not about wealth, not about fame, not about glamour. It was about family, about roots, about resilience. It was about turning a simple love for football into a destiny. And though the world would one day know him for his flamboyance, for his dribbling, for his character, those foundations were laid in the quiet suburbs of Birmingham, in the love of his parents, in the loss of his brother, in the laughter of his friends, and in the endless hours with a ball at his feet. So tonight, as you let sleep take you, remember this first chapter of Jack's story. The boy who dared to dream, the boy who dribbled endlessly, the boy who carried both joy and pain into his game. His journey had only just begun, but already the seeds of greatness were planted. And as your eyes grow heavier, let that thought carry you gently into rest, just as Jack carried his dreams into the night. When Jack Grealish began to approach the threshold of adulthood, his connection with Aston Villa deepened into something larger than just football. Villa was not only the club he played for, it was the club of his childhood, the stadium he had walked past with wide eyes as a boy, the badge he had traced with his fingers on replica shirts, and the colors he had carried in his heart since the earliest days. And so, when he began to train more regularly with Villa's senior team, It felt less like stepping into a new world, and more like stepping into the world he had always imagined belonged to him. At 16 and 17, he was already recognized as one of the brightest prospects in the Villa Academy. His style of play was unmistakable. Head up, dribbling close to his boots, socks rolled down to his calves, shin pads barely visible. To some, it looked careless, but to Jack, it was freedom. He wanted to feel the ball at his feet without restriction, wanted to glide across the pitch with the lightness that defined his game. The academy coaches, who had seen hundreds of players pass through their hands, admitted that Jack was different. He had not just skill, but personality, flair, confidence. He was not afraid to take risks. He was not afraid to be himself. Villa's youth matches began to draw more attention whenever Jack played. Local fans whispered about him, and word began to spread that there was a kid in the academy who could become something truly special. Journalists started noting his name, and scouts from rival clubs, always eager to steal away young talent, began circling. Yet Jack never thought seriously about leaving. For him, Aston Villa was not just an employer. It was family, identity, a dream that tied his childhood to his future. In 2012, when he was only 17, Jack was named on the first team bench for the first time in a Premier League match. Imagine that. A boy who once stood in the stands at Villa Park now wearing the club suit, walking through the tunnel, sitting shoulder to shoulder with senior professionals. He did not get on the pitch that day, but for Jack it was a glimpse into the life he longed for. He returned home glowing, telling his family every detail, from the feel of the grass to the sound of the crowd. It was not just football, it was validation. The boy from Solihull was close to making it. His official debut, however, would take a little longer. In 2013, Villa decided he needed regular competitive minutes, so they loaned him to Notts County, a club in England's lower divisions. At first it seemed like a step down, but for Jack it was crucial. At Notts County, he faced the raw, physical side of English football. Muddy pitches, tough defenders, long bus rides to away games, smaller crowds, but fierce intensity. Here, Jack learned resilience. No longer was he the academy prodigy. He was now a teenager in a men's league, facing opponents who cared little for his reputation. They kicked him, shoved him, tried to intimidate him, but Jack thrived. He dazzled Notts County fans with his dribbling, his vision, and his ability to change games. He scored goals, provided assists, and more importantly, learned what it meant to fight for points in difficult conditions. Those months toughened him, prepared him for the Premier League's demands. When he returned to Aston Villa in 2014, he was no longer just a talented boy. He was a young man ready for the top level. His long-awaited senior debut came in May 2014, when he stepped onto the pitch against Manchester City. The game itself was not one of Villa's best, they lost heavily, but for Jack it was unforgettable. Wearing the claret and blue in the Premier League, facing world-class opponents, it was the realization of a dream. Fans noticed immediately that he played with flair. Even though Villa struggled at times, Jack's ability to carry the ball forward, to glide past defenders, gave them hope. He looked different from other English players. Less direct, more artistic, more continental in style. His Irish heritage, his natural dribbling, and his courage on the ball set him apart. People began to compare him to players like Paul Gascoigne, another Englishman known for flair and creativity. For a boy barely out of his teens, the attention was overwhelming, but Jack embraced it. Over the next 2 seasons, he began to feature more regularly. Villa, however, was in turmoil. The club that had once been proud, a European Cup winner in the 1980s, was struggling badly in the Premier League. Ownership issues, managerial changes, poor results. Everything seemed to be going wrong. Yet amid the chaos, Jack emerged as a bright spark. He represented not just talent, but hope for the fans, who were desperate for a local boy to rise and lead them. One of his breakout moments came in the 2015 FA Cup semi-final against Liverpool at Wembley Stadium. Jack was only 19, yet he played with astonishing maturity. Against one of England's biggest clubs, he showed no fear, running at defenders, creating chances, dazzling with his movement. Aston Villa won 2-1, shocking Liverpool and advancing to the FA Cup final. For Villa fans, it was a day to remember. And for Jack, it was the match that made him a household name. Journalists praised him, pundits admired him, and Villa supporters sang his name. Though Villa would go on to lose the final to Arsenal, that semi-final confirmed what many had believed. Jack Grealish was the future, but the future was not without difficulties. The following season, 2015-16, was disastrous for Aston Villa. The club was relegated from the Premier League, finishing at the very bottom of the table. For fans, it was heartbreak. For Jack, it was a test of loyalty. Other young players in his position might have left, seeking Premier League football elsewhere, but Jack stayed. He declared that Villa was his club, and he would fight to bring them back. It was a decision that endeared him forever to the supporters. They saw not just a talented player, but one of their own, someone who shared their pain and their pride. In the Championship, England's second division, Jack faced another challenge. It was a brutal league, physical, relentless, with dozens of games crammed into the season. Defenders targeted him, fouled him constantly, tried to bully him out of matches, but Jack grew stronger. He learned to ride challenges, to use his low center of gravity to protect the ball. Slowly, he transformed from a promising youngster into a leader. Fans began to see him not only as a flair player, but as someone who could carry responsibility. There were still controversies. Jack's off-the-pitch lifestyle sometimes drew criticism. Photographs of him at parties, stories of late nights, rumors of a carefree attitude. These followed him, especially in the Championship years. The media loved to question his professionalism. But when Jack stepped on the pitch, his dedication was clear. Managers defended him, teammates supported him, and fans forgave his youthful mistakes. They knew his heart belonged to Villa, and his talent was undeniable. By 2018, Jack had matured further. He was given the captain's armband at Aston Villa, a symbolic moment for both him and the supporters. To see a boy from Solihull, a lifelong Villa fan, wearing the captain's armband at Villa Park, it was more than football. It was a story of loyalty, of destiny. Jack embraced the role, leading by example not always with words but with courage and creativity. In the 2018-19 season, he guided Villa to the Championship playoffs. At Wembley, in front of tens of thousands, he lifted the playoff trophy as Villa returned to the Premier League. For Jack, it was vindication, for his loyalty, for his patience, for his belief in the club. He had promised he would bring Villa back, and he delivered. The years that followed cemented his place as a Villa legend. Even in the Premier League, with big clubs circling, Jack stayed, producing brilliant performances, dazzling with his dribbling, carrying Villa on his shoulders. He became their talisman, their icon, their captain fantastic. Fans wore his number 10 shirt with pride. Children in Birmingham copied his hairstyle and his socks-down look. And journalists described him as one of the most exciting English players of his generation. Yet, as he grew in stature, one question always loomed. How long could Villa hold on to him? Big clubs wanted him. Manchester United, Tottenham, even Barcelona were linked. But for Jack, leaving Villa was not just a football decision. It was an emotional one. He had grown up with the club, suffered with the club, triumphed with the club. To leave would mean leaving part of himself behind. And so, as you rest tonight, drifting into sleep, imagine Jack in those years. A young captain walking out at Villa Park, greeted by chants of Super Jack wearing the claret and blue with pride, leading his boyhood club back to where it belonged. He was not yet the superstar of Manchester City, not yet the household name across the world. He was still the local boy, the Villa captain, the dribbler who carried dreams on his shoulders. These were the years that forged him, the years that defined him, the years that turned talent into leadership. As the years passed and Jack Grealish grew from a promising academy graduate into a central figure at Aston Villa, something beautiful began to happen. The boy who once dreamed of playing at Villa Park became the captain who carried the hopes of tens of thousands every week. This was not an ordinary story of talent rising to the top. This was a story about loyalty, about identity, about the connection between a footballer and the fans who saw themselves in him. And as you listen now, resting, eyes growing heavier, think of that connection as a thread, soft and unbreakable, tying Jack to the club of his heart, even as the wider world began to take notice. By 2018, Jack had firmly established himself as Villa's talisman. He had already played a crucial role in their promotion back to the Premier League, wearing the captain's armband in front of a sea of claret and blue at Wembley. For Villa fans, that moment was unforgettable. A local boy lifting the playoff trophy, leading them back to the top division. In that instant, Grealish was no longer just one of them. He was all of them. He was the child in the stands who dreamed, the father who worked all week and found joy on Saturday, the grandmother who remembered Villa's glory days. He was their bridge from past to present, their hope for the future. On the pitch, his style made him unique. No English player dribbled quite like him. He glided, he drew fouls, he shifted his balance with elegance. His low socks became a symbol, a kind of rebellion, but also a comfort. Defenders hated facing him because they could not take the ball from him without bringing him down. Referees blew their whistles again and again, as Jack set records for the most fouled player in the Premier League. To fans, those fouls were not just interruptions, they were proof of his bravery. Jack was willing to take the hits, to carry the team forward, to absorb pain for the sake of progress. As captain, he grew into a leader. He was not a loud, shouting figure, not someone who barked orders constantly. Instead, he led with his play, with his courage, with his ability to change matches. When Villa were trailing, it was Jack who demanded the ball. Jack who tried to create, Jack who believed when others doubted. His teammates respected him, not only for his talent, but for his dedication. Many said that in training, he was always the one pushing, always the one demanding intensity. Behind his smile, behind the glint in his eyes, was a professional who wanted nothing more than to win for his club. There were unforgettable moments during these years. Against big teams like Manchester United, Liverpool, and Arsenal, Jack would often rise to the occasion, dribbling past world-class defenders, making Villa fans roar with pride. One of the most iconic came in 2020, when Aston Villa stunned Liverpool 7-2. In that extraordinary match, Jack was everywhere, scoring, assisting, creating chaos. For fans, it was not just a victory, it was a statement. Villa, with their captain leading them, could take on anyone. But life as a Villa captain was not always glory. There were also tough times, moments of injury, stretches when Jack was sidelined and Villa struggled without him. His absence showed just how important he was. Without Grealish, the team often looked lost, missing his creativity, his spark, his leadership. This only deepened fans' appreciation. They realized how much he meant to the team, how much he gave, how much he carried on his shoulders. The media began to pay more attention to him too. Journalists admired his flair, his fearlessness, his charisma. Pundits compared him to legends of the past. Some said he was the closest thing England had to a modern-day Paul Gascoigne. Others described him as the most entertaining player in the Premier League. His hairstyle, his socks, his swagger, it all became part of his identity, something that made him stand out in a world often filled with uniformity. Off the pitch, Jack's personality also began to shine. He was charming, sometimes cheeky, always smiling in interviews. Fans loved him not only as a player, but as a character. He felt relatable, human, not distant or untouchable. He laughed, he joked, he carried himself with authenticity. And though there were occasional controversies, stories of nights out, pictures from parties, fans forgave him. To them, he was one of their own. He was not perfect, but he was real. Being captain also meant carrying pressure. Every defeat, every setback, every challenge seemed heavier because Jack felt responsible. He admitted in interviews that the weight of expectation was intense, yet he thrived under it. He said once, "I know what Villa means to the fans because it means the same to me. I grew up here. I'll give everything I have for this club." Those words were not empty. They were reflected in his performances. For children in Birmingham, Jack became an idol. They copied his haircut, wore their socks low, and tried to dribble like him in schoolyards. He inspired a new generation to believe in Villa again. For older fans, he was a reminder of the club's proud past. Proof that even in difficult times, the spirit of Villa lived on. By 2021, it was clear that Jack Grealish was more than just a player. He was a symbol. And yet whispers grew louder. Big clubs wanted him. Manchester City, with their wealth and ambition, were watching closely. For Villa fans, the thought of losing Jack was painful, almost unthinkable. They remembered the loyalty he had shown, the sacrifices he had made, the way he had stayed when the club was relegated. And yet, they also knew he deserved the chance to play on the biggest stages, to fight for titles, to show the world his talent. In those final seasons at Villa, every match felt precious. Fans filled Villa Park knowing they might be watching their captain for the last time. Every dribble, every smile, every moment carried extra weight. Jack too seemed to sense it. He played with freedom, but also with awareness, as if cherishing the time he had left in the claret and blue. When the transfer finally came in the summer of 2021, it broke hearts. Manchester City signed Jack Grealish for a British record fee, a staggering sum that showed his value. For Villa fans, it was a bittersweet moment. They were proud of their captain, proud of his rise, proud that the world now saw what they had always known. But they were also sad, deeply sad to see him go. Many cried, many felt betrayed, but deep down they understood. Jack had given them years of loyalty, had carried them back to the Premier League, had led them with honor. Now he was moving on to a new chapter. Looking back, his years as Villa captain were more than just seasons of football. They were years of identity, of love, of connection between a club and a player. He was not just wearing the shirt. He embodied it. He lived it. And for Villa fans, no matter what came next, Jack Grealish would always be one of their own. So tonight, as you rest, imagine him again at Villa Park, walking out to the roar of the Holte End, the claret and blue scarves waving, the chants of Super Jack filling the air. Imagine him with the ball at his feet, socks rolled down, gliding past defenders, smiling as he played the game he loved. This was Jack Grealish, the Villa captain, the local hero, the legend of Birmingham. And as your eyes close, let that picture carry you gently into sleep. The boy who became a captain, the captain who became a legend. When the summer of 2021 arrived, and Jack Grealish left Aston Villa for Manchester City, it marked not only the most expensive transfer in English football history at the time, but also a turning point in his journey, a step from being a beloved local captain to becoming part of one of the most star-studded squads the game had ever seen. For Jack, it was bittersweet. He had left behind his boyhood club, his hometown fans, and the stadium that had shaped him. But he also knew that if he wanted to test himself at the very highest level, if he wanted to compete for Premier League titles and Champions League glory, this was the path he had to take. And so, with heavy heart but excited mind, he put pen to paper, pulled on the sky blue shirt of Manchester City, and walked into a new world. The moment he arrived, everything felt bigger. At Aston Villa, he had been the star, the central figure, the man everyone looked to. At City, he was just one of many stars. Kevin De Bruyne, Raheem Sterling, Riyad Mahrez, Phil Foden, Ilkay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, and above them all, Pep Guardiola, a manager known not just for winning, but for demanding perfection. For Jack, it was an adjustment. At Villa, the team had been built around him. At City, he had to adapt to a system where the collective mattered more than the individual. The pressure was immense, the expectations sky high. Journalists and pundits questioned whether he could justify his price tag, whether he could fit into Guardiola's intricate style. His early months were challenging. City played football with precision, with passing triangles, with movement choreographed like a dance. Pep demanded discipline, tactical awareness, and patience. Jack was used to freedom, to carrying the ball, to dribbling past defenders, to being the man everything flowed through. Now he was asked to adjust, to sometimes hold the ball less, to pass quicker, to trust the system. Fans were eager, critics were sharp, and every performance was scrutinized. Yet through it all, Jack remained calm. He smiled in interviews, admitted that the adaptation was tough, but insisted he was learning. And learn he did. Though his first season was not filled with goals and assists, those inside the club praised his work ethic, his willingness to adapt, his contribution in ways that statistics did not always capture. Pep defended him, telling the media, "We did not bring Jack here only for goals. We brought him for control, for intelligence, for the way he keeps the ball." Slowly, the criticism softened. Teammates trusted him, coaches valued him, and fans began to see the glimpses of brilliance they had admired at Villa. By the second season, everything began to click. Jack understood the system more deeply. He combined his natural flair with Guardiola's demands, becoming not just a dribbler, but a playmaker who pressed relentlessly, who worked tirelessly off the ball, who defended from the front. He became known for his ability to draw fouls high up the pitch, relieving pressure, and for his unselfish runs that opened space for others. And as City pushed toward history, Jack was at the heart of it. The 2022-23 season became one of the greatest in Manchester City's history, and one of the greatest in Jack's career. The team chased the treble, the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League. Every match was a test of nerves, of endurance, of belief. And in those crucial games, Jack shone. Against Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester United, he played with courage and flair. Against Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final, he tormented defenders with his dribbling, keeping possession, creating chances, driving City forward. Pep praised him publicly, saying, "Jack is now one of our most important players. He understands everything." And then came Istanbul, June 2023, the Champions League final against Inter Milan. For City, it was the night they had dreamed of, the trophy that had eluded them. For Jack, it was the culmination of years of growth, from the boy dribbling in Solihull streets to the man standing on Europe's biggest stage. The match was tense, cagey, difficult. Inter pressed. City struggled at times, but in the end, victory was theirs. When the final whistle blew, Jack fell to the ground, tears in his eyes. He had done it. From Villa Park to the Champions League crown, from a boy with a ball to a man with history in his hands. After the match, he gave interviews that instantly went viral. He was honest, emotional, unfiltered. "This is the best night of my life," he said, voice cracking. Fans loved him even more for it. In the celebrations, Jack became the heart of the party. He sang, he danced, he poured his joy into every moment. Videos of him celebrating for days on end spread across social media. Some laughed, some criticized, but most adored him. He was authentic, he was himself. And after years of dedication, he allowed himself the release of pure happiness. For Manchester City fans, Jack had become one of them. He was no longer just the Villa boy. They saw him as a warrior in sky blue, someone who fought for the badge, someone who gave everything on the pitch and lived every victory to the fullest. His energy, his smile, his warmth made him a favorite. And in the dressing room, teammates praised his positivity. Erling Haaland joked that Jack was the funniest guy in the squad. Pep, usually stern, admitted that Jack brought joy to the team. As the seasons continued, Jack's role remained vital. He might not always have the statistics of a striker, but he offered balance, control, and moments of magic. He played with freedom, yet with discipline. His story became one not just of talent, but of evolution. From the carefree dribbler of Villa to the tactical soldier of City, without ever losing his personality. Off the pitch, Jack continued to show his human side. He spoke often about his family, about his sister Holly, who has cerebral palsy and inspires him every day, about his brother Keelan, whose memory he still carried. He dedicated victories to them, reminding the world that football is not just about trophies, but about love, about family, about the people who shape us. And yet, the media still loved to talk about his nightlife, his celebrations, his parties. Some criticized him, others defended him. But Jack never pretended to be someone he wasn't. He admitted, "I like to enjoy myself, but I always work hard. I give everything on the pitch." That honesty made him more relatable. Fans saw not just a superstar, but a human being. Flawed but real, disciplined yet joyful, professional yet playful. At City, he also found a new kind of spotlight. Commercial deals, sponsorships, magazine covers. Jack became a global star. His hair, his style, his charm made him a recognizable face far beyond football. Yet through it all, he often reminded people of his roots, speaking proudly of Solihull, of Villa, of the journey that brought him here. He had not forgotten where he came from, even as he stood on football's highest stages. For England, too, Jack remained a vital figure. Gareth Southgate selected him regularly, often using him as an impact player to change games with his dribbling and energy. Fans sang his name, chanted Super Jack in stadiums across Europe, and saw in him something different, a player who played with joy, who brought flair to the Three Lions. Though sometimes he was not a starter, his impact was undeniable. And so, as you lie in bed now, drifting slowly into dreams, picture Jack in the sky blue of Manchester City. Arms wide, smile across his face, running toward fans after a crucial win. Picture him lifting the Premier League trophy, kissing the Champions League medal, laughing with teammates in champagne-soaked celebrations. Picture the boy who once dreamed in Birmingham, now living the dream in Manchester. His Manchester City era was not just about winning titles, though he won many. It was about transformation, about proving he could succeed at the very highest level, about balancing his natural flair with the demands of the most tactical manager in the world. It was about joy, about freedom, about finding a place in a team of stars while still shining with his own light. And as your breathing slows, let that image of Jack Grealish, arms raised, smile unbreakable, champion of England, champion of Europe, carry you gently into rest. Because his story reminds us that dreams can be realized, that journeys can lead from local streets to global stages, and that even under the brightest lights, the truest victory is to remain yourself. As Jack Grealish moved further into his career, he discovered that football was never just about what happened on the pitch. It was about perception, personality, family, love, tragedy, and the unique way a man chose to live his life under the constant glare of the public eye. For Jack, this was both a gift and a burden. He was adored for his flair, his honesty, his charm. He was criticized for his parties, his celebrations, his imperfections, and yet through all of it he remained himself, never pretending, never bending fully to expectations. And that authenticity became perhaps his greatest legacy. The summer of 2025 brought another surprising chapter. After 4 years at Manchester City, after titles, after Champions League glory, after endless celebrations, Jack needed something different. City, chasing younger talents and balancing their squad, agreed to loan him out. The destination was Everton, a historic club in need of inspiration. For many it was shocking. How could a Champions League winner, a treble hero, a superstar, move to a team fighting its own battles? But for Jack it was an opportunity to play more regularly, to remind everyone of his ability, to embrace a new challenge in a city with its own fierce love for football. When the news broke, Everton fans were ecstatic. They had watched Jack for years at Villa, admired him reluctantly at City, and now he would wear their blue shirt. Goodison Park, with its raw energy, its close stands, its passionate supporters, seemed a perfect stage for him. And though it was only a loan, the excitement was undeniable. Journalists wrote that Jack's arrival could light up Everton, that his dribbling, his charisma, his creativity would give the Toffees something special. For Jack, the move also carried echoes of his past. At Villa, he had been the talisman of a club outside the elite, carrying the weight of expectation. At Everton, he felt something similar. These fans were desperate for joy, for hope, for a player who could make them believe again. And Jack understood that role perfectly. From his very first appearances, he played with freedom, gliding past defenders, winning fouls, creating chances. Evertonians sang his name, delighted in his swagger, embraced his personality. Once again, Jack Grealish was not just a footballer, he was a symbol. Off the pitch, Jack's life remained as fascinating as ever. He continued to be open about his family. His bond with his sister Holly, who has cerebral palsy, remained central to his story. He often spoke of how she inspired him, how she reminded him that football was just a game, and that love and resilience mattered most. His tributes to his late brother Keelan remained heartfelt, as he never forgot the fragility of life. These personal truths grounded him, even as fame threatened to overwhelm. The media, of course, never stopped following him. Every celebration, every night out, every word became a headline. When City won the treble, Jack's wild celebrations were captured for days. Some laughed, some criticized, but most saw the humanity in him. He was not a polished robotic athlete who said only cliches. He was raw, real, emotional. At Everton, the spotlight was different. Less glamorous, more gritty. But Jack embraced it all the same. He laughed with fans, posed for pictures with children, joked in interviews. He reminded people that football, at its heart, was joy. And beyond football, Jack became a figure in culture. His hairstyle, his socks, his swagger, these became iconic. Children across England copied him. Advertisers wanted him. His face appeared on billboards. His charm carried him into commercials. His humor made him a popular guest on television. He straddled the line between athlete and celebrity, but unlike many, he seemed to enjoy it. He didn't shy away from attention, but neither did he let it consume him. He was still the boy from Solihull at heart, just playing the game he loved. His legacy, however, was not only about entertainment. At Manchester City, he had proven he could be disciplined, tactical, intelligent. At Aston Villa, he had shown loyalty, passion, leadership. And at Everton, he was showing resilience, the ability to adapt, to inspire even when the setting was different. In interviews, he admitted, "I just love playing football. Whether it's Villa Park, the Etihad, or Goodison, I just want to be out there, enjoying it." That simple love was what carried him through criticism, through pressure, through expectation. Journalists began to reflect more deeply on his journey. They wrote of a man who had been doubted, too small as a boy, too flashy as a teenager, too expensive as a city signing. And yet every time he had proven people wrong. They wrote of a player who embodied both the beauty and the chaos of football, who lived fully, who celebrated loudly, who played joyfully. Some called him the last of a dying breed, a footballer who played with instinct, not algorithms. As he entered his late 20s, questions began about his future. Would he return to City after Everton? Would he stay with the Toffees permanently? Would he perhaps even venture abroad, to Spain or Italy, to try something entirely new? Jack smiled when asked. "I don't know," he said. "I just live in the moment. Right now I'm happy, and that's enough." And perhaps that was the essence of Jack Grealish. He was never about careful planning, about meticulous control. He was about the present, the joy of the dribble, the roar of the crowd, the laughter of teammates, the music of celebration. He lived for the now, and in doing so, he reminded everyone else to do the same. So, as you rest tonight, let this final image of Jack linger in your mind. Picture him in Everton blue, ball at his feet, socks rolled down, hair flowing as he drifts past a defender. Picture him laughing with fans, hugging his sister, pointing to the sky in memory of his brother. Picture him not as a perfect athlete, not as a flawless icon, but as a man, flawed, joyful, passionate, alive. Jack Grealish's story is not just about goals, assists, or trophies. It is about being real, about carrying family in your heart, about embracing joy in victory and resilience in defeat. It is about loyalty and change, about Villa and City, about Goodison nights under the lights. It is a story about football, yes, but also about life. And as your eyes close, let that story be a lullaby. The boy from Birmingham, the captain of Villa, the champion at City, the fighter at Everton. A journey not of perfection, but of authenticity. And in that authenticity lies peace. Sleep now, knowing that even under the brightest lights, the greatest gift is to remain yourself.